बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम वसल्लल्लाहु अला नबील करीम रब्बिश्रह ली सदरी वयस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। The topic for this morning is peace. You know, peace is the most important need of a society. Without peace, there is no social harmony. Without peace, there is no development, no progress. So, peace is the base of all kind of goodness. We have to find out the formula of peace. According to my study, this question bothered every mind in every age. In every time, people were searching and studying how to establish peace. So, according to my study, there are perhaps 6 models of peace. Maybe there are some other models, but basically there are 6 models of peace. The first model recorded in the history was adopted by Romans. You know, Roman Empire based in Rome reigned the world up to 2000 years. The longest period perhaps. So, Romans adopted a formula of peace which is known in history as Pax Romana. Pax was the name of God of peace in Roman culture. So they adopted their peace formula in the name of their peace god. So it is known in the history as Pax Romana. Now, what was this formula? This formula was completely based on force. You know, Romans were believing in violence. According to them, arm was only source of power and strength. So they wanted to establish peace by the arm, by political force. This was the Pax Romana. I think obviously they were successful in establishing peace, although it was established by force and there was no freedom. There was no freedom. So, due to this, there was no intellectual development during Roman Empire. You know, although Roman Empire lasted up to 2000 years, but there was no scientific progress. There was peace, but there was no progress in that system. So, although were they successfully established peace, but at the cost of abolishing freedom. So I don't think that it was a model for rest of the world. It was only helpful to establish their empire. By this formula, they were able to make people their political slave. But at the same time, they, in that period, there was no scientific progress. This was the Pax Romana. Then the second model is Pax. The second model is the American model that is called Pax Americana. When Americans became superpower, they tried to establish peace in international affairs. What was the formula of American people? They wanted to establish peace again by force, although it was somewhat different from that of Romans. You know, Americans initially tried to engage people in dialogue, political dialogue, negotiation. But when negotiation failed, they tried to establish some compulsions in terms of economic compulsion and political compulsion. And if this kind of compulsion failed, they tried to dropped bomb, like Japan and Iraq. They dropped two atomic bomb in Japan for establishing peace. Although there was peace in Japan, but by establishing peace, they destroyed two largest cities of Japan, that is Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then they wanted to establish peace in Iraq, but again, their bombardment destroyed Iraq. And still there is no progress in Iraq. So, American model or peace Americana was not a perfect model. Maybe it was in favor of American supremacy. Maybe it was helpful to establish, to maintain Americans as superpower in the world politics. But it was completely, but it gave negative result as far as the other nations are concerned. It is this reason that now Americans are, now people all over the world hate Americans, especially Muslim countries. If you travel Muslim countries, we will hear that everywhere Muslims are saying that America is number one enemy of Islam. America Adul Islam Raqam Wahid. So although they tried to establish peace, and in some sense they achieved, but at the cost of hate, at the cost of negative results. So this was American model, which is called Pax Americana. Then there is the British model. You know, British reign a large area of globe up to 200 years. I think that Britishers were better than the Americans or Romans. Let us take India as an example. Britishers occupied India, but they adopted two-point formula. One was to occupy Indian cities and towns directly. But at the same time, they found that in India there are more than 500 states. So they adopted the strategy that they gave internal autonomy to all these states, like Hyderabad, Kashmir, Gwalior, Jaipur, Jodhpur, so on. So they never abolished these states, but they gave internal autonomy. They wanted them to pay tax. After paying the tax, they tried to adopt the policy of non-interference. So I think this was better than the Roman model than American model. Although I cannot say that people were happy with British rulers, but I can say that in some sense it was better than the Roman model and American model. Then there is the model of United Nations. You know, there were two international organizations. First, after the first was named as League of Nations. During pre-Second World War, there was League of Nations. It was an international organization, but it failed to achieve its target. The target was to establish peace among nations, but it failed completely. Then, in the post-Second World War period, they adopted a new model that is called United Nations Organization, based in New York. League of Nations was based in Geneva. Its headquarters was in Geneva, but the headquarters of United Nations lies in New York. But again, UNO is a case of failure. You know, the method adopted by United Nations was resolution and demand. But they failed because United Nations have no force, no military power. So United Nations can adopt resolutions, but it has no power to implement its resolutions. So you see everywhere in the world that there are so many problems, there are so many war and fighting, but the nations is quite helpless. Although they issue statements, they adopt resolutions, but in vain, because behind these resolutions there is no power. They cannot implement their power. They cannot implement their resolutions. They have no power to translate their resolutions in practice. So although its headquarters remain in New York, I have seen it when I was in New York, but as far as the result is concerned, United Nations is completely a case of failure. United Nations, the purpose of United Nations was to, to bring peace in international life, but it completely failed. So United Nations model is also an is not a practical model. Ideologically it seems Ideologically it seems better. It seems good. Ideologically it seems a beautiful model, but practically it failed. You know, all the nations are members of these organizations. All the nations have signed its charter. But United Nations have no power over all these nations. So it is a case of failure. Then there is the Gandhian model. I think the Gandhian model was, Gandhi was able to achieve his target. The target of Mahatma Gandhi was to achieve freedom. You know, the freedom struggle started in 1857 in India. But at that time, the leaders involved in this campaign, their thinking was that freedom can be achieved only through arms. So their freedom struggle was based on violence. Even Subhash Chandra Bose went to the extent that he established an army that was called Azad Hind Fauj. But you know, it failed. Now there is no Azad Hind Fauj. There are no generals of that army. Even Subhash Chandra Bose has no trace. People speculate that he died in some air crash, but no one knows with certainty that where is Subhash Chandra Bose. So from 1857 up to 1919, India's freedom struggle has adopted arm and violence. But this struggle failed to achieve its target. Target was to oust the British rulers. Target was to achieve political freedom. But they failed to achieve this goal. Then Mahatma Gandhi came. At the time he was in South Africa. He came in India and he became the leader of freedom struggle. Mahatma Gandhi was influenced by Jainism and he was a great believer of ahimsa. So he declared after he entered the Indian politics, he declared that we will adopt the ahimsa, we will adopt the non-violent activism. So he completely abandoned hinsa or violence. There is a interesting anecdote which illustrates what was the Gandhi's formula and how it was a successful formula. So when Mahatma Gandhi declared that we will follow the ahimsa principle towards our freedom struggle, then was a problem. Britishers felt that they're helpless. And how they felt that Mahatma Gandhi, by declaring this, have and after this declaration, they have no justification to adopt violence, to gun down the freedom struggle. So there is a very interesting anecdote that a British magistrate sent a telegraphic message. At that time, there was only telegraph to convey the messages. Now there are telephones, but at that time there was no telephone. So this British magistrate sent a message to the secretariat, to the British secretariat. The wording of this telegram was wire instructions how to kill a tiger non-violently. It means that when freedom struggle has adopted peace and ahimsa, then we have no justification to fire and kill them. This was the power of Mahatma Gandhi. Previously, people adopted arm as a source of power. But Mahatma Gandhi adopted demonstration, people's demonstration, as his force. So this was the technique adopted by Mahatma Gandhi. He used the people's demonstration as a source of strength, as a source of power. So Britishers saw everywhere people's demonstration, everywhere people's meeting, everywhere people's slogan, without violence, without hinsa. So British rulers became bewildered. You cannot fire those people. You cannot open fire those people who are adopting peace, who are completely non-violent. So this was the strength of Mahatma Gandhi. He used public demonstration as a power. He used public demonstration as a power. He used public demonstration as a source of strength, as a source of power. So this was the strength of Mahatma Gandhi. He used public demonstration as a power. He used public demonstration as a source of strength, as a source of power. So this was the strength of Mahatma Gandhi. He used public demonstration as a So this was Gandhian formula of peace. So although Gandhi was successful, he achieved freedom by the way of peaceful activism. Also, there were some minus points because by using this method, he destabilized the whole society. I am a witness of that society. When I was in my childhood, I saw that Indian society was an established society. Established society. But Gandhi destabilized the whole society. Those people were engaged in service, in education, in different fields. They abandoned their activities. Students abandoned their education, service, servants abandoned their services, and everyone came out on the street. So all the traditions were broken. There is a saying, very well saying that it requires a lot of history to make a little tradition. So although Gandhi was successful, but the price of this success was breaking all the traditions of Samaj, society. So the price was to destabilize the whole society. And it is the result of this method that in post-independence era we find that India was a land of anarchy. It is not legacy of Britishers. The anarchy we see in India at present, it is not legacy of Britishers. At that time, society was stable. We were living in a stable society. But now we are living in a society where everywhere there is anarchy. So it is legacy of Mahatma Gandhi's method. Present anarchy is legacy of Mahatma Gandhi's method rather than British Empire. So Mahatma Gandhi's model have two opposite aspects. In one aspect, it was successful to oust British people, but in the other aspect, it bring about anarchy and lawlessness in Indian society. There was a politician in USA, Galbraith. Sometime he was also ambassador, US ambassador in India. He said that India is a functioning anarchy. He gave the name of functioning anarchy. It means that although India is functioning, although in India there is anarchy, but it is functioning. So he gave the title of functioning anarchy to Indian system. So this was the Gandhian model. Now I would like to say a few words about the Islamic model. I think the Islamic model is the best model, not in ideal sense. In this world, ideal cannot be achieved. So I'm not saying that Islamic model is ideal model. I am saying only that in practical sense, it is the best model. There is a difference. When you claim that this is ideal model, then it means that it's defectless model. But in this world of test, it's not possible to establish an ideal model. It's not simply possible. What is possible is that in practical sense, you may establish a system that is comparatively better than the other models. So this is my claim. I say that Islamic model is best model, but not in ideal sense, but in practical sense. Now, what is the Islamic model? Islamic model of peace is quite different from other models. The basic difference between the two categories is that all other models believe that first of all, we have to eliminate the status quo. First of all, this is the starting point according to their thinking. That first of all, we have to eliminate the existing system that is called political status quo. Then we can establish peace. For example, in India, Mahatma Gandhi wanted to oust Britishers. Without ousting Britishers, there is no possibility to establish peace in India. This was the case of all other models. For America, Americans wanted to eliminate Saddam Hussein. With Saddam Hussein, there was no possibility to establish American peace in Iraq. So is the case of all other models. But in contrast, Islam believes in what I call positive status quoism. Positive status quoism. It means that accept the status quo as it is and try to avail the opportunities existing in that given situation. This is the distinctive difference in Islam and other models. So according to this model, the formula is ignore the problem and avail the opportunities. So Islamic philosophy or Islamic ideology believes that every situation has some opportunities. According to the law of nature, inna ma'al usri yusra. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Everywhere there are problems, there are opportunities. This is the basic formula of Islamic peace. For example, let us take the Meccan example. You know the Prophet of Islam was born in Mecca in 570 AD. He declared his prophethood in 610. At that time, there was great problem that all Meccans were worshippers of idols. Moreover, the most sacred mosque, that is Kaaba, was filled with idols. They have placed 360 idols in the vicinity of Kaaba. That was great problem because Prophet of Islam was appointed. This was the Prophet of Islam's mission. The only mission was that to proclaim the oneness of God and warn the people that those who are worshippers of other than God, they will go to hell. So all these idols were like gate of hells. So he was supposed to close all these gates. So this was the problem, super problem. But Prophet never started his mission from destroying those idols. Never, never, never. Instead, he accepted their existence. He used to go to Kaaba where 360 idols were placed, but he never touched these idols. He never tried to destroy these idols. Simply, he used to read Quran and declare this formula that "Qulu la ilaha illa tuflihu." You know, at that time, the vicinity of Kaaba was a place of gathering, there is assembly. Not only Meccan people, but other tribes used to visit Kaaba to worship their idols. In fact, all these 360 idols were idols of different tribes. It was not simply idols of Mecca. It was idols of all the Arab, all the tribes living in Arabia. So every day people visit Kaaba to worship their idol, to offer their prayer. So it was a permanent assembly. Prophet availed this as opportunity. He used to go, used to visit Kaaba daily and read Quran. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَٰذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينِ. So all these verses were message of Tawheed, of oneness of God. You can see here the policy of Islamic, the Islamic model. It means that avoid idols and avail the opportunities, or avoid the problems and avail the opportunities. This is very unique formula. Throughout the whole history, people tried only one formula, that eliminate the problem so that you may find peace. This is quite un-Islamic. And it means that first off you have to destroy non-peace, so to have peace. If you travel Arabia and ask people why you are engaged in violence, do you not like peace? They will say that, yes, we want peace, but with justice. As-salam ma'al adl. We want peace but with justice. Give us justice and I'm ready to establish peace. This is wrong. This is un-Islamic. This is un-Islamic. The Islamic formula is that in every situation, in every given situation, there are some problems, but at the same time, there are opportunities. So avoid the problems and avail the opportunities. And then we will find peace. The Prophet of Islam has said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُعْطِي عَلَى الرِّفْقِ مَا لَا يُعْطِي عَلَى الْعُنْفِ. God grants to non-violence what he does not grant to violence. What it means? It means that if there are problems of violence, you have to avoid it. Don't go to fighting. Instead, you have to avail the opportunities. This was the policy of Prophet of Islam. So when he was in Mecca, he avoided idols and availed the opportunity of preaching. Then, after 13 years, they wanted to kill the Prophet of Islam. Then what happened? He avoided again the fighting and simply migrated from Mecca and settled in Medina. Why? Because he was aware that although Meccan people have become hostile, but in Medina they have a soft corner towards Islam. Why? There was a basic difference between Mecca and Medina. In Medina, there was water, there was agriculture, there was horticulture. So their economy was based on agriculture and farming. But in Mecca, there was no water, no agriculture, no horticulture, nothing. So Meccan people have no source of income. Kaaba was only source of income for them, because every day people visit Kaaba and offer something. So their offering was their income. Kaaba became a center of idol worship, and every day worshippers visit Kaaba for offering. So these offerings was only source of income for Meccan people. So Meccan people, the mind of Meccan people was that if we accept Tawheed and abandon shirk or idol worship, then we will lose all our source of income. If we establish Tawheed or oneness of God in Mecca, it means that we will be deprived of all those sources, all the incomes. So due to this fear, Meccan people became hostile. But this kind of fear was not prevailing in Medina. So Medina people have no problem in accepting the ideology of Tawheed. The Prophet of Islam understand this difference between Mecca and Medina. So he migrated from Mecca and settled in Medina, and without any kind of war, without any kind of fighting, Medina people accepted Islam. There was no such kind of atrocity which was faced by which was faced by Prophet in Mecca. Here I would like to give a very relevant reference. When the Prophet migrated from Mecca after 13 years and reached to Medina, people gathered over there, and at that time he addressed Medina people. This address is narrated by Ibn Ishaq in his book of Sirah. Under this caption, أول خطبة خطبها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في المدينة. So the gist of this address is that, O people, اتقوا النار ولو بشق تمرة. O people, save you from the hellfire. There was no mention of those atrocities committed by Meccan people, not at all. No reference either directly or indirectly. Simply he said that, O people, save yourself from hellfire. So this was the formula of peace of Islam. The starting point in formula of peace in Islam is that avoid all kind of confrontation, avoid all kind of war, and avail the opportunities. There is a very relevant verse in the Quran, as-sulhu khair. Reconciliation is the best. This is the formula of peace. Reconciliation is the best. It means that in every situation, in every society, in every condition, you have to adopt the formula of conciliatory course of action rather than confrontational course of action. By this formula, you can establish peace. This formula was adopted by Sufi people in these words. Sulh-e-kul. Sulh-e-kul means, it is a Persian word. Most literature of Sufi people is in Persian. So sulh-e-kul means peace with all. Peace with all. Here peace means no fighting, no war, no violence. So the starting point in Islam towards establishing peace is that you have to accept the prevalent situation. So the difference between Islam and other ideologies. In all other ideologies of peace, in all other model of peace, they say quite different word. They utter quite different word. In Islam says that peace with all. they say that peace can be attained only after eliminating the non-peace. This, this is the basic difference between Islamic formula or other formulas. Then I would like to say that Islam has the contribution of Islam towards peace is a very, very important. Here I would like to give some aspect of that scheme. For example, Islam says that use of arm is that people are not allowed to use arms. People can go to peaceful negotiation, peaceful dialogue, but they cannot use arm. There is a well-established law in Islam, ar-rahilu lil-imam. Ar-rahilu lil-imam. To declare a war is a prerogative of state. You see, all those violence now we see everywhere in the world is committed by non-governmental organizations. No state is involved in these so-called jihad. All those items of violence that are reported in media are committed by NGOs rather than Muslim states. So according to Islamic law, they are not allowed to go to violence. According to Islamic principle, only state can declare a war.